So once again, welcome everyone to the class, the Buddhist Path of Awakening class. and we're working our way through a chapter tonight from a book by Tulku Ujun Rinpoche. Tulku Ujun is a teacher who's passed now, but he was quite well known, and he was the father of some teachers who are alive and abroad and very powerful today. Tsoknyi Rinpoche was his son, as well as Mingyur and Chiki Nyima Rinpoche. And there's a fourth who doesn't teach, but those three are all abroad teaching, and they're wonderful teachers. Tulku Ujun Rinpoche, a lot of Trungpa Rinpoche students, not a lot, but a number of them, when Rinpoche died, Trungpa Rinpoche died, they went to study with Tulku Ujun Rinpoche for quite a few years. So we're working our way through a chapter from one of his books that Michael selected. It's chapter 4 from volume 2 of As It Is. So Michael, let's bow in. Forgot. And Michael is going to lead off.
So, welcome everyone. I've always found that one of the values of being able to hear or read different teachers is that sometimes they use different language and different perspective, and it allows us to become clearer about something that might not be clear when we start. I'm just going to switch the gallery view. I like being able to see everyone. So that's the value to me of reading or hearing or seeing different teachers, is that sometimes different words just strike us in a different way. And I've read this chapter several times. I always find it very powerful. There's many key points that to the practice of meditation that he covers in this chapter. It's quite packed. One of the important points is that shamatha, or mindfulness meditation, is necessary, but that shamatha alone is not sufficient, that we also need to develop vipassana. This is not something unique to Tulku Ujun at all. This is from many, many, many teachers, that shamatha is necessary but not sufficient, that to become enlightened, to develop wisdom, to develop prajna, that we need to practice vipassana as well. And so it's important to understand what the role that shamatha plays. And it's also important to understand that at a certain point, shamatha can actually become an obstacle, which is one of the other points that he makes in this chapter. So to begin, I actually want to share a little bit from a different book altogether that I've been reading. That was recommended when I went on the pilgrimage to India back in November. A book titled Old Path, White Clouds by Thich Nhat Hanh, which is basically a biography of the Buddha, although some parts are somewhat fictionalized. But it presents the teachings mainly from a Hinayana point of view, but as Thich Nhat Hanh says in his note in the book, it's really not hard to see how the Mahayana teachings developed out of the view that he presents in the Hinayana. And in this particular section, the Buddha is asked by some children, young teens, to say something about what it is that he's recognized. And what he says is that, he says, children, at this point in time, children have brought the Buddha some food, some tangerines. And he asked the children if they know what it means to eat a tangerine with awareness and without awareness. And he says, when you peel a tangerine, you can eat it with awareness or without awareness. What does it mean to eat a tangerine in awareness? When you are eating the tangerine, you are aware that you are eating the tangerine. You fully experience the lovely fragrance and the sweet taste. When you peel the tangerine, you know that you are peeling the tangerine. When you remove a slice and put it in your mouth, you know that you are removing a slice and putting it in your mouth. When you experience the lovely fragrance and taste of the tangerine, you are aware that you are experiencing the lovely fragrance and taste of the tangerine. What does it mean to eat a tangerine without awareness? When you are eating the tangerine, you do not know that you are eating the tangerine. You do not experience the lovely fragrance and sweet taste of the tangerine. When you peel the tangerine, you don't know that you are peeling the tangerine. When you remove a slice and put it in your mouth, you do not know that you are removing a slice and putting it in your mouth. Eating a tangerine in such a way, you cannot appreciate its precious and wonderful nature. If you're not aware that you are eating the tangerine is not real. Children, eating the tangerine in mindfulness means that while eating the tangerine, you are truly in touch with it. Your mind is not chasing after thoughts, but is dwelling fully in the present moment. So I like that because the point isn't just the tangerine itself, although in one sense it is just the tangerine itself. But if we look at our own lives, and especially as we come to practice meditation, we realize that a great deal of the time we're not fully aware of what we're doing. We're not fully in touch with what we're seeing, feeling, tasting, smelling, hearing. And that we can do this in all kinds of activities. We can walk mindlessly, we can eat mindlessly, we can speak with people mindlessly, reactively, and that there is a profound difference in our experience when we're aware, when we're present, when we're available, and when we're not. This is why in the reading that we did last week, Trungpa Rinpoche talked about Shamatha, which is basically mindfulness meditation. That Shamatha is what makes us available to hear the Dharma, that we actually are available. We're available to whatever we're experiencing, the tangerine or whatever else it might be. So in one sense, the point is the tangerine is a point of reference to understand something about being present, being aware, and not being present, not being aware. But in another sense, it really talks all together about how we live our lives. In the remainder of the chapter, the Buddha says something about just as the tangerine can be divided into sections, so can our day, and that we could actually live 24 hours in awareness, which is also what Trungpa Rinpoche says. So with shamatha meditation, essentially the essence of shamatha, if we wanted to, the essence of shamatha is that there's an object of meditation that we work with. And in this case, the Buddha is using eating a tangerine as an example of that. The taste, the fragrance, the texture as we peel, that all of these things are a point of present experience that we stay with or come back to if we become distracted. Most often in meditation, we work with the breath as a point of reference that we come back to or we try to stay with. Sometimes shamatha meditation is called recollection, not in the sense of looking for a hidden, distant memory, but recollection of just simply staying present, and that we use an object in shamatha to stay present and to bring us back if we become distracted. Another point I wanted to make, which I think the tangerine example makes very clearly, is all of the things that can distract us. There are all kinds of thoughts that we can get caught up in. Thoughts of the past, thoughts of the future, thoughts of a love affair, thoughts about how to pay the bills. We can have anxious thoughts, we can have paranoid thoughts, we can have jealous thoughts, we can have angry thoughts, we can have political thoughts. There are all kinds of things, all kinds of complexities that we can get caught up to. But the actual experience of tasting the tangerine, being with the breath, is very, very simple. It's right here. If we were eating tangerines right now, we'd know exactly that very simplicity. And from the Hinayana all the way through the Vajrayana, that notion of simplicity really, we need to keep that in mind. We need to come back to that over and over again. So basically the chapter begins with a student asking a question. So I assume this entire chapter actually is a transcript, obviously, of a teaching that Tulku Ujin gave. And the student says, "A while ago you told me to train while not meditating. I've done that for the last week, and it appears that my distractions have increased. What should I do now?" And he begins by talking about the importance of shamatha practice. That in the context of the general teachings, one is talking about ascension being, that would be us, who's experiencing uninterrupted bewilderment, one thought after another. He describes it as being like the surface of an ocean in turmoil, with waves and just constant movement, constant agitation, constant struggle, you could say. The constant bewilderment without any recognition of mind essence, just like eating the tangerine without awareness. And he says this confusion is continuous. And that's why he says that to tell a person who's experiencing this kind of confusion, this kind of agitation, this kind of speed, this kind of distraction, to tell them that shamatha isn't necessary would be really unskillful, because their mind is like a drunken elephant or a crazy monkey. And he says such a mind has grown used to the habit of following after what is thought of without any insight whatsoever. So in other words, the problem isn't simply the thought themselves. It's the habit of following thought after thought, taking each thought to be real, to taking each thought to be urgent, to take each thought as being compelling, to identify with thoughts in such a way. So it's actually the habit of following one thought after another. And he says that such a person having that kind of an experience, which was certainly me in the beginning of my practice of meditation, that it would be unskillful not to introduce shamatha at that point, that we need shamatha in order to develop some stability of mind. Because, he says, once confused thoughts have subsided to some extent, once there's some calmness and tranquility, then it's easier to recognize the clear insight of emptiness. So, and then he says teaching styles are adapted to two kinds of mentality. He says one is oriented toward perceived objects, the other toward the knowing mind. And what he's really saying here, this is just another way of dividing the teachings up. The Hinayana teachings in particular, and the Mahayana teachings somewhat, are oriented toward looking at perceived objects and coming to some understanding of mind and some understanding of experience through that. Whereas the Vajrayana in particular and the Mahayana, we get into the higher teachings of the Mahayana, really are looking more at understanding the knowing mind. What is the nature of mind? He says the first mentality pursues sight, sound, smells, tastes, and mental objects, and is unstable in Buddha nature. Because of the threefold bewilderment, the bewilderment of object, the sense faculty, and sense perception. So the bewilderment of object is taking an object, taking something that we perceive to be real, and not only taking something to be real, but saying what we project onto it, whatever our judgments and labels are, to take those to be real as well. And then we pursue objects, or we aggress against objects based on the projections that we have toward that object. And the bewilderment of sense faculty and sense perception talks about our confusion of inner and outer, our tendency to project a real world out there and a real perceiver here, as opposed to understanding all of it as display of mind. Think back to the reading that we did with Khenpo Tsultrim Gyamtso's Progressive Stages of Meditation on Emptiness. The second type of meditation that he talks about is realizing that everything we experience is essentially a projection of mind, is the nature of mind. So that's the threefold bewilderment in a nutshell. And he says once we do that, then we become carried away with thoughts. And he points out that thoughts come out of our empty cognizance. So he uses the term empty cognizance. In other teachings, you'd hear things like clarity emptiness, appearance emptiness, sometimes even bliss emptiness. But that it's essentially empty cognizance is the true nature of mind. And to quote his son, Tsoknyi Rinpoche, the problem is that we get lost in the display of the senses, the display of our thoughts, the display of our emotions, and forget the essence, which is the true nature of mind, which he talks about later in this chapter, although it begins here, that the nature of mind is clarity, emptiness. The nature of mind is empty cognizance. The empty quality, if we settle enough in shamatha, then we develop the ability to, as Trungpa Rinpoche says, look further. And even in the teachings in the eating the tangerine with and without awareness, the Buddha introduces elements of Vipassana, of looking further. Because it then says, to continue the reading from that chapter, from Old Path, White Clouds, that a person who is really present when they're eating the tangerine, being with the tangerine, can actually look further, will begin to see all the causes and conditions that brought the tangerine about. Sun, rain, soil, seed, tree, farmer, a marketplace if you bought it. That for this tangerine to actually be present to us, there are all kinds of causes and conditions. So that our tendency to see ourselves as an isolated ego here and some kind of other world out there begins to break down, because we begin to see more of the interconnectedness and interdependence of things. And then he asks a really interesting question of his audience. This is my last point in terms of tangerine. He asked them, do you think someone will make more errors if they live in awareness or in unawareness? And children say, obviously, that if you live in awareness, you're less likely to make errors because you're dealing with things as they are. And the Buddha says, just so. And talks about, again, the importance of awareness as, in terms of practice, and as really being the core of his teaching, to live in awareness, to be in awareness, to understand awareness. As Trungpa Rinpoche said, the element of Vipassana is looking further. So that the point is that with Shamatha, we settle the mind, but with Vipassana, then we can look further. We can actually see the true nature of things. And that's what he's talking about here. Thoughts come out of our empty cognizance. He says they don't just come out of the empty quality. The empty quality of mind can be experienced in various ways. We can come to see how changeable mind is, how thoughts, feelings are transitory, changing all the time, impermanent. We can look directly at the nature of awareness itself and see that you can't really pin any one thing down, that it's ultimately unfindable. We can define it, we can use labels for it, but the actual experience we can't really pin down. But the point that he's making here is that emptiness, which is a space-like quality to mind, open quality to mind, that space doesn't think, space doesn't have thoughts. Thoughts are in the mind, and the mind, as he's mentioned so often, is the unity of being empty and cognizant. Clarity, emptiness, appearance, emptiness. If it were only empty, there would be no way thoughts could arise. So again, the importance in the general vehicles, meaning the Hinayana, Mahayana, is that Shamatha is necessary in order to abide peacefully and to counteract our tendency to constantly fabricate, to constantly go from thought to thought, idea after idea, issue after issue, concern after concern, without awareness, without having any kind of stability. However, the reason why shamatha itself isn't sufficient is that just simply bringing about stillness, bringing about tranquility isn't enough. Because as he says, all of the characteristics that may be settled while we're in quietness, stillness, are still there in a latent sense. When thoughts, as he says, when thoughts move, we again become caught up in delusion. So shamatha alone isn't enough. Shamatha is necessary so that we can have the capacity to see and begin to understand something of the empty cognizance, clarity, emptiness, the empty nature of mind. But by itself, simply being able to rest in stillness isn't enough. That we need to allow ourselves to be open to the experience of Vipassana, clear seeing, superior seeing. We need to come to understand something about our nature. As he says, the nature is primordially free of the obscurations of thoughts and emotions. That thoughts and emotions are only temporary, and with any kind of stability in our experience, we see that. What we think about, what we feel changes from moment to moment. But the actual character, he says the actual character of mind is one of self-existing wakefulness. So he's talking about recognizing the true nature of mind as wakefulness. To actually see the essence of mind. And with this, he gives actually some construction on exactly what we need to do. He says and he points out that in the beginning that our ability to rest in uncontrived naturalness will only last for short moments, that we have flashes of insight, flashes of moments when we're just able to open completely. But the key words there are uncontrived and natural. And this is why when we practice meditation, it's so important to understand something about not having a goal, not engaging in effort with Vipassana. There's a little bit of effort with Shamatha, but with Vipassana, it's really effortless. We have to let Vipassana come to us. We have to let ourselves open, let our minds open to being able to see with the eyes of Vipassana. And that we only can sustain, he says, or only experience uncontrived naturalness for short moments. And we should do this many times. Short set, it's very similar to Mahamudra instruction of short sessions many times. And the point is that by doing this, we become accustomed to this. It becomes easier to recognize in our experience. And that the more we do this, the short moments grow longer. And he also says that this is important because he actually says that in these moments of uncontrived naturalness, where we're actually able to just rest in the true nature of mind, transforms a kalpa, an eon of negative karma. And he says this is a really key instruction. He says you need to simply allow the moment of uncontrived naturalness. And he says instead of meditating upon it, meaning focusing on it, just allow it to naturally be. Just allow it to naturally be. And he says it's more a matter of familiarization than actual effortful meditation at this point. So we need to engage in shamatha practice, which does have an element of effort to it. There's coming back and recognizing distraction. But with Vipassana, we just allow it to occur when it does. It's not effortful, it's not goal-oriented. If there was a goal, then there's a conceptual object, and that becomes a problem. We're, at that point, moving away from our actual experience and relating to something that we imagine might be better, or something that we think we should be experiencing. So with Vipassana, it's the sense of relaxing the mind and letting go of effort is really important. He goes into talking about the faults of shamatha at this point, and says he says that the naked essence of mind, the basic awake quality of mind, open awareness, is not known in shamatha because the mind is occupied with abiding in stillness, and for that reason it remains unseen. He says the preoccupation of being calm blocks recognition of self-existing wakefulness, and also blocks the knowing of the three kayas of the enlightened, of the awakened state. He says the calm that we experience at that point, which can feel like such a relief compared to the ordinary struggle that we engage in regard to conventional pursuits. But so that the calm can feel like such a relief. It can be there can be a sense of freedom to it, but it's not complete freedom, and that's the point that he's trying to make, and that. If we become attached to that, if we make too much of an effort to produce that, then that really becomes an obstacle to developing Vipassana. So again, the key point is being able to recognize awareness when it arises, Vipassana awareness when it arises. He says the root of samsara is thought. The owner of samsara is thought. Nonetheless, the very essence of thought is dharmakaya. This is what we say in the chant. Because thoughts ultimately are just in the expression of mind. The problem is we don't see them that way. We have a limited view. So again, lost in the display, we forget the essence, as Sutni Rinpoche says. And again, again reiterates the point that Training in Vipassana it's not an act of meditating on something, but it's a getting used to. It's becoming familiar. It's being able to recognize, being able to allow it to occur when it does. He goes back again to Shamatha, that meditation generally means paying attention, but in this case, we need to train in being free of the watcher and what is being watched. In Shamatha, there's an observer and an observed. And so at this point, Shamatha becomes a training in blocking off emptiness. So we have to open up, let go at this point. In the Vipassana readings that we did, Trungpa Rinpoche quoted Milarepa, not being attached to the pool of Shamatha, let the flower of Vipassana bloom. So once the mind settles, once we're able to relax, once we aren't following the habit of pursuing thought after thought, once we have some steadiness and stability, then we can just allow ourselves to open up and let go into just Vipassana seeing. That's the practice. But with Shamatha, something's always maintained. And as he says, anything that's a product of training is not liberation. He uses the metaphor of an ocean that's for a period of time calm, but still has all the latent seeds of potential disturbance, potential agitation, potential confusion. And he says, in the same way, being in the sustained state of stillness, the habitual tendency, even though in the same way during a sustained state of stillness, the habitual tendencies, and he goes through the 80 innate thought processes, all the 51 mental events, all of the different things that come up in mind are still there latently. They may not be obvious, they may not be active, but still they're not liberated. That it's actually Vipassana. This is why it's Vipassana that ultimately brings liberation. He says what he's criticizing here is the idea that the stillness of mind, free from thought, is ultimately preferable or a goal in itself. The Buddha's teaching is that it isn't. Stillness in itself is not liberation, and by pursuing it, one can attain long, long stretches of tranquility. But this is not the same as true liberation. And then he brings up again the Dzogchen term, Rigpa. The awakened state of Rigpa, on the other hand, is wide open. Nothing is fixated on. You don't attain enlightenment by Shamatha alone. You need Vipassana, the quality of clear seeing, which is inherent in the emptiness beyond conceptual mind. So again, and this is one of the critical points in the Vajrayana, and even again in the higher teachings of the Mahayana, that essentially we already have what we need. We just need to recognize it. We need to develop it. We need to develop confidence in it. We need to develop the ability to allow it to occur and being able to rest in it without trying to contrive and without trying to alter it in any way. As he says, so you need you need Vipassana, the quality of clear seeing, which is inherent in the emptiness beyond conceptual mind. And then he says, as does Trungpa Rinpoche, that ultimately Shamatha and Vipassana are inseparable. The two go together, stillness and insight, Shamatha and Vipassana. So long as we aren't relating to Shamatha in such a way that we're trying to create a state of mind that's where there's some kind of maintained calmness, some kind of maintained stability, then Shamatha becomes inseparable from Vipassana, because ultimately, what do we rest in? What do we not get distracted from? Awareness itself. We're able to rest in awareness itself, and ultimately, that's the essence of Shamatha, is not being distracted. When it's practiced with an object, which is what we do when we use Shamatha in order to help calm the mind and develop some stability, that's one thing. But at another point, Shamatha and Vipassana become inseparable. He says, in the beginning of Shamatha practice, we could use a pebble or the breath as an object of attention. But in this case, there is always duality. The split between the object of attention and the attentive mindfulness itself. In Dzogchen, on the other hand, one is introduced, he gets into the Dzogchen here, that In Dzogchen, it's introduced to the naked state of Dharmakaya directly at the beginning. And he says there are some Dzogchen texts that will say that stillness is not absolutely necessary, but he clarifies this is only meant for persons of the highest capacity. It is not meant for everybody. There are actually Dzogchen texts. I have one somewhere titled Buddhahood Without Meditation. But as he says, this is only for beings of the highest character, highest quality. For most of us, it's a gradual path. He says it's not a general Dzogchen teaching to dispense with shamatha. So you begin with shamatha and continue until you're able to remain acceptably steady. And then you need to allow Vipassana to occur. In order to gain the insight of Vipassana, it's first necessary to allow the mind to settle so that your essence can be seen clearly, and that's indispensable. And he says, as does Trungpa Rinpoche, that there are different levels of Vipassana, that as you go through, you uncover more depth as to the meaning of Shamatha and Vipassana. And this is an important point too. Ultimately, in Vajrayana point of view, it says that all the qualities we need are already present in mind. So then you might ask, what do we need? Why do we need a path then? And the reason that we do is that we don't recognize that. And if we understand the path, we'll understand that the path in the Hinayana, Mahayana, and Vajrayana is essentially a path of uncovering and discovering, or you could say letting go and recognizing. And that we need all of the teachings to help us to let go, because in many cases we don't realize where we're fixated, we don't realize where we're stuck. And so, for instance, the Madhyamaka reasonings are very helpful in coming to understand something about what it means to relate non-conceptually, to let go of labels, to let go of concepts, and so on. So with Rigpa, which is, again, the true essence of mind, the true nature of mind, he says the intrinsic steadiness is shamatha and the awake quality is vipassana. The shamatha is the unchanging quality of innate steadiness, while the natural sense of being awake is the vipassana aspect. And he says neither of these are produced in any way. Again, this is particularly clear in the Vajrayana teachings, that we already have everything we need. There's nothing that we need to have added to our experience, that is just more a matter of just coming to recognize what we already are, what we already have. And he explains, and again, he's talking to the student who asked the question in the beginning. When I told you not to meditate, it was not to meditate in the sense of mind-made meditation. So again, he was warning the student who asked the question about, he was warning him not to get so caught up in shamatha that he blocked vipassana. That clear seeing is empty cognizance, your naked awareness, beyond waxing and waning. And he says this sentence has incredible meaning, that basically awareness is, this is what Trungpa Rinpoche used to call indestructible wakefulness, indestructible awareness. That no matter what we experience, our awareness is unaffected and is always available to us, always present to us. He says when we're remaining without doing anything, we let go of effort. When we let go of effort, goal, concept, label altogether, there's total letting go. In the same manner, there's also a sense of being wide awake. There's an awake quality that is unproduced. So again, uncontrived, natural. That's the state of mind that we're learning to recognize through our practice. And he says the recognition of emptiness is accomplished the moment you look, seeing no thing as a supreme sight. But then what do we do? Because as he says, in the beginning, this is just a flash. Even though at first we're out of a job, what we have to do is leave it uncontrived, which means you don't have to alter it in any way. Just leave it naturally as it is. At that moment, he says, you're out of a job. But then we fixate, we label. We go from recognition to identification and conceptual labeling. And he says at that moment, we get lost. And this is again where he says, don't meditate. This is where Trungpa Rinpoche, when he described Vipassana experience, he said, we disown it. We don't try to hold on to it. But actually, we sustain, it's paradoxical, but we sustain the experience by letting go. Because otherwise, the moment we fixate, label, and define, we're relating to a past experience. And we're already, even in a very subtle way, not in a present awareness at that point. We're looking at something that just occurred, or we're hoping that we're trying to recreate that experience in the next moment, which is a future thought, a very subtle future thought, but a future thought nonetheless. So whatever you do to, Tulku Ujin says, whatever you do to try to keep or prolong the natural state only envelops it in more activity and complexity, which is not what we need. We have been doing, he says, we've been doing this nonstop anyway for countless lifetimes. He says the perfect Dharmakaya is when thought has been allowed to subside. We just let go into openness, let go into awareness, let go into the Dharmata, things as they are, things, the moment as it is. And yet he says Dharmata is not a thing to be seen. If it were, it would be a product of mind. And he says, again, as sentient beings, we tend to hold on to this moment rather than staying in nowness. We hold on to these experiences. And yet, again, the real teaching is to be able to let go, to be able to, as Trungpa Rinpoche says, disown, and allow ourselves just to rest in awareness, free of the thoughts of the three times, past, present, and future. So again, he speaks to the student directly. The shamatha I told you to be free of, in the sense of not meditating, is mind-made peace. It's extremely good that you have dropped it. Mind-made peace is not the perfect path to liberation. Existence and peace, samsara and nirvana, we need to be free of all of those. That is the perfect state of enlightenment. In other words, the experience of the natural state of mind, the true nature of mind, the essence of mind, is non-dual. It's just direct, immediate experience without perceiver and perceived, and it's non-conceptual, which makes it hard to talk about, but a really skillful teacher like Tulku Ujin is able to do it. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to John to finish the chapter.
Thank you, Michael. Let's start out by doing some practice together a little bit. So take a good posture, just because it helps us become more aware, more awake. And let's meditate upon the breath. You're aware of the breath as it comes up. You can feel it as it departs from your nostrils, goes out into space. You count 1. Breathe in, breathe out, count 2. We're counting the breaths. Breathe in, breathe out, count 3. Breathe in, breathe out, 4. Breathe in, breathe out, 5. Breathe in, breathe out, 6. Breathe in, breathe out, 7. Breathe in, breathe out, 1. Breathe in, breathe out, 2. Breathe in, breathe out, 3. Breathe in, breathe out, 4. Breathe in, Breathe out. 5. Breathe in. Breathe out. 6. Breathe in. Breathe out. 7. So, you can keep that up. And in so doing, you achieve a kind of stillness, peace. Your mind calms, and you rest in this awareness of the breath, going out into this space and dissolving. This is shamatha. It produces stillness, calmness, peace. It's not something you can do while you are driving your car, as I often say, because you wouldn't be aware of the cars around you. You'd be focused on your breath. So it's something only done in private, you might say, to still the mind to some extent. You'll still have thoughts, but you might have fewer thoughts. And there might be a feeling of calmness, stillness, as you focus on this object. You can focus on many things. Could be a mantra, Om, Om Ahom, that's a common one. Another common one is the Mani, Om Ahom, Mani Padme Hum. Whatever. Could be a pebble, as he says in the texts. You just focus your attention on the pebble, and then it dissipates the attention. Maybe thoughts come, and then you come back to your attention of the pebble. This is shamatha. It's a way of dealing with our tumultuous, unpredictably chaotic mind that produces all kinds of thoughts that are karmically determined. They follow one another in our neurosis. We're worrying about something, and it produces a chain of worry thoughts. We're fantasizing about something pleasant, and we get involved in a chain of pleasant fantasies. And then we come back to awareness using this technique, the breath. And it produces a kind of stillness, the stillness of the thoughts not moving. Instead, there's awareness of the breath, going out, dissolving. There may be thoughts, even along with that, along with the breath, but they diminish, and we experience a sense of calm. This is one aspect of the mind of sanity, you might say, the mind of enlightenment. This stillness, this calmness. But we can't live with shamatha. Shamatha it's like taking a drug to achieve relief from some kind of unhappiness or pain. When we do that, we're not our true selves. And this shamatha is kind of a benign form of drugging, you might say. And yet, its essence, this stillness, the freedom from thought, is also a part of enlightened mind. So it's necessary to maybe start with shamatha and then move on into Vipashayana. Now, Vipashayana, the word, let's talk about the meanings of these words. The Tibetan is very descriptive. For shamatha, the Tibetan is shine, which means abiding in peace.
Or Jennifer, Jen McGrew.
I'm sorry, I just got to get rid of this phone call. Which means abiding in peace. Shi is peace. Ne means to live or dwell. So shine means dwelling in peace. That's the practice of shamatha, working with the breath. Vipashayana in Tibetan is hlak tong, which literally means seeing superior. It's superior seeing because we're seeing this world clearly without the overlay of thought, which is always, when we overlay it with thought, we're using judgments. This tree is good, that person is bad, whatever it may be. And we see the world through this veil of thought, labels, purposes. I'm going to meet this person. And we see the person not as they are, but as someone we're going to meet, whatever it might be. Hlak tong, Vipashayana, is to see it very simply as it is. Now, in fact, here's the trick. We are always experiencing hlak tong, and it includes shine. But right now, you are seeing this image of me, you're hearing this voice, you're aware of your environment. All of this is hlak tong, is Vipashayana. It's here all the time. You can't shut it off. It's our fundamental nature, this awareness. We overlay it by saying, oh, that's a picture of John Baker. Oh, I'm hearing teachings. Oh, my foot went to sleep. And we say things about what we experience. But the hlak tong itself happens unstoppably. So at some point, what meditation becomes is not an act of calming the mind, is not even an act of trying to be aware. It's simply an act of coming back to this, which is always here. We relax, we see, oh, I've been thinking, and we're back effortlessly. Michael said, this has to be effortless. Has to be? It is. It just is automatically. Effort obscures it. Effort is a wrong idea that we have to create something. We don't. All we have to do is stop daydreaming, and here we are. We are coming back without even trying to come back. We come back automatically. It's like we're pulled back by a rubber band. We're attached to this. All we have to do is acknowledge it. This hlak tong, this Vipashayana. Trungpa Rinpoche said, one of the aspects of enlightened mind, one of the important aspects of enlightened mind, is natural curiosity. That is a feature of Vipashayana, that when we come back into this present, effortless, simple awareness that's always here, always. It just gets obscured when we get lost in thought of one kind or another. Oh, I must be doing something wrong. I've got to do it this way. I've got to do it that way. And then that disappears. We get tired of that thought, and here we are again. This is where we always wind up, right here, wherever here happens to be. And what he said was that one of the qualities of being here is to be naturally interested, naturally curious about what is going on here. It's natural. When we come back, we want to understand it. So if you're sitting in front of somebody with the mind of hlak tong, with the mind of Vipashayana, with a mind of simple, clear awareness, you're interested. Who is this person? What do they have to say? What are we going to do together? All of those things, you don't have to even voice them at all. They're inherent in the moment. So these two qualities, and then also in that hlak tong, there's no thought. If the thoughts come up, they take you away. Oh, I remember this person. They did something mean to me a while ago, and suddenly you're gone. You're back in a dream, a memory. And then you say, yeah, but that was yesterday, and maybe I'm confusing this person with somebody else. And you let it go, and then you're back right there. We're doing it right now. You're going away into dreams, thoughts. I can see some of you off dreaming, thinking, in one place or another. You can see it in your eyes. When a person does that, you can see they're going like this, and you know that they're thinking of some other place. And then you come back, and here we are. It's that simple. And here we are, and you're curious. What's coming next? What teaching is coming next? Is this going to be helpful, useful to me? That curiosity of Vipassana, and you're here. And you give up preconceptions. To the extent you give up preconceptions and questioning particular questions like, I hope I'm going to get something out of this, you become more open. So this is a huge and important topic. Shamatha and Vipassana. It's really describing enlightened mind. And in fact, that's what Tulku Ujun is doing. He's talking about Mahamudra, which is the highest teachings of the Kagyu sect. Mahamudra means great symbol. And this is really it. This is the end point of Mahamudra. He's talking about Dzogchen. Dzogchen is Tibetan. It means great perfection. Dzog is perfection. Chen is large, great. And it's the ultimate teaching of the Nyingma sect. And he talks about, and we're going to get into this in the second half of this chapter, and I think what I'm going to do is take this a little bit more slowly. And maybe we're going to stop in another minute or two, and I'll do the second half of this chapter next week, because we're already at 6:30. And this is such important stuff, such wonderful stuff. And what you are getting in the second half, he's going to be talking about Tamagi Shepa, which is Tibetan. It's really a Kagyu term, and it means, the four sects, right, of Tibetan Buddhism: the Sakya, the Gelugpa, and then we are Kagyu and Nyingma. Kagyu means the ear-whispered lineage. The ear lineage. Ka is word, and Gyu is lineage. It actually means Tantra, but Tantra means continuity. So the Kagyus are the sect of the continuity of the word. Nyingma means the old ones, because they go all the way back to Padmasambhava, when Buddhism first came to Tibet in the 8th century. So they call themselves the Nyingmas, Nyingmapas, the old ones. The Kagyus define this confluence of Vipassana, awareness practice, and Shamatha. They talk about it as being ordinary mind. This is ordinary mind. This is not a practice. This is what you come back to. It's your ordinary mind. We all have it. Isn't that wonderful? We just get lost in dreams. We get lost in fears and hopes, in insecurities. And the whole practice is to come back. To come back to what? To come back to this ordinary mind, which is the union of Shamatha and Vipassana. The Nyingmas call this Rikpa, which is the translation of the Sanskrit vidya, which means seeing. It's the same thing. It's seeing, it's the true seeing, not obscured by concept, open space. Pure Vipassana is open space seeing. And it is effortless because we come back to it. What's key is to realize that the Vipassana is what you already have, what you already are. And when we begin to realize that it's here right now, all around us, you can't stop it, then you don't have to make an effort to experience it. You just come back. Oh, I was daydreaming. Now I'm back. This is it. This simple. It's this ordinary and this wonderful. And you come back to it out of thought, out of hope and fear, of past, present, and future. And here we are, awake, aware, blowing our nose, whatever it might be. That's the key, is it just, you come back to this. It was always here. It's just that we got waylaid, we got distracted, we got ambushed by thoughts who said, look at me, look at me, look at me. Pursue me, the thought says. And we've been doing that for a long time. And when we come back to this open space, here right now, it's here, it's all around. You just come back. You're giving up purposefulness. That could be a little worrisome for some, but you got to try it. We're living a very different way. He says later, we're giving up the 3 times, past, present, and future. There's only this. This is the only reality. You can't even call it the present because that's relative to the past and the future. It's this. Or it's not. So this is a wonderful chapter. It's very advanced in a way. It's the key to Tantra. It really is. Tamagi Shepa, ordinary mind, Rikpa, which is Vidya, which is pure seeing. I once asked Sokni Rinpoche, that's one of the things I admire about Sokni Rinpoche. He's still a student. He comes to teachings that are given by a man named Khenpo Namdrol, who used to be the head teacher for the Nyingma sect. Now he's retired, but he's teaching Westerners. And Sokni Rinpoche would always come to those teachings. And one day, during a break, I ran into him on the street, and I asked him if there was a difference between Tamagi Shepa, the Kagyu term, and Rikpa, the Nyingma term, because they sound alike. And he said, no difference. He said there's a difference in the way they're taught. The Kagyus teach ordinary mind gently, gradually, whereas the Nyingmas like to do it with a jolt, suddenly, wake the person up, coming out of dream. But the essence, what they are, this ordinary, beautifully so ordinary, always here, mind, which we're all doing right now, every one of us here in this room. We get lost in thought for a while, and then here we are, we're come back. And what we're coming back to is Tamagi Shepa, ordinary mind, Rikpa, insight or vidya, pure seeing. And he says, as Michael pointed out, we do this, the practice is to come back. It doesn't matter if it's short. You come back and then you start thinking, oh, I've just done it, or oh, maybe I'm not doing it right. And then you're back here again. Here we are. And you do this repeatedly. And don't worry about it. Don't worry about how well you're doing it or how many times you've done it. Just do it repeatedly. It will grow on you a lot. On me, on all of us. It's a wonderful teaching he gave us to do this just repeatedly again and again and not worry about how well we're doing it. If you worry about how well you're doing it, then you're not doing it. And you've got some idea in mind of what it is, what it's supposed to be. There is no idea. It's just this, already here. But we're all sitting in the midst of. Whatever it might be, the feeling of your bottom on the cushion now that I mention it, the sound of this voice now that I mention it, the visual objects now that I mention it. All of these. So I'm going to stop. And we'll do the second half of this chapter next week. We have something to look forward to. And remember this, I think this is so helpful, that one of the key aspects of this, of Tamagishepa, of Rigpa, is curiosity. Curiosity about the world. It's natural. It's non-conceptual. It's like you see this and you're involved in it. It makes art happen. It makes relationships happen. When I think of Trungpa Rinpoche, I always felt that he was just sitting there so interested. And if there was nothing to be interested in, he was ready for it, to be interested in the next thing. And when you sat down opposite him, he was sort of saying, okay, what's next? Who are you? What are we going to talk about? What are we going to do together? And that was the way he was 24/7. From the moment his eyes opened in the morning till the moment they closed at night. And in the early days, I was there for both of those times. And I tell you, he woke up interested. He called it curiosity. He said it's one of the main features of the Vajrayana, is that when you, enlightened mind is curious about the world, wants to explore. No purpose, just interest. So we could have a discussion. I hope that's okay, Michael. I'll split it into next week. I just felt that this is what you presented was so rich and when there was so much in there that we need to slow down and take it.
That's fine. I was also going to say Trungpa Rinpoche, there's a real playful quality to his curiosity.
He did. He was
Very, very playful.
He was indeed. Yeah.
Fred?
I'll show you a picture that I think captures that. I have this on my shrine, and it's partly because, look at those eyes.
Yeah.
So sweet.
Anyway, we did have hands up for a moment there.
Yeah.
I got a question on the bookends of the practice. Arousing bodhicitta, taking refuge, and then dedicating the merit. I don't say it, but I'm assuming our mind, we should do our best to remain in a state of rikpa while doing that, right?
I think you just do it, Yeah, just do it. I mean, I found that really wonderful. And it was so reassuring. All I have to do is start out by, before the four immeasurables, wishing people happiness and freedom from suffering, and etiquette, and end by dedicating the merit, and then that'll protect me, put me on the right path. I encourage you, at least I do, to take that seriously. Make us relax. And also, be kind. It's the essence of the path, to be kind to others. Wish others well. That'll make one's journey on the path go much more quickly, meaningfully. heartfelt. But thanks, that's wonderful to bring that up. Yeah, I was taken when he said that. And we do that. That's the way we start and end our practice. Together. Tom.
Hi there. Thanks, everybody. You know,
Oops.
when I was reading this chapter, it brought to mind an adage that they use in the theater and film, which is "Don't act, no acting, please." And the direction is to, you know, to listen to your acting partner and to react to them and to be open to them. So that reminded me, don't meditate, reminded me of no acting, please. No meditating, no acting. Um, but I did have a question about um, openness on one hand and curiosity on the other. And um, it's taking me a minute to put the two together. To the way Vipassana is described as we've been talking about it is just complete openness to the world and to what your surroundings are and to this. And then, but the curiosity part of it to me implies some activity, some initiation, as opposed to an acceptance of the world. And I just wanted to know if you could talk a little bit more about that.
That's a great question. I'll take a stab, and then I'm hoping Michael would take a stab too. I think that what happens is that as we open to this without agenda, we become interested in it. The texture of that sweater, the sound of that voice, the quality of that mind that's expressing me. So there's the quality of interest. And then as well, there's responsiveness. That person speaking, they say hello, and you say hello back. So there's a quality of, when one is open, there's a quality of natural involvement, responsiveness to the world. The barriers have come down. And it's a quality of enjoyment. When I think of Trungpa Rinpoche, he was such a lesson. I felt that he loved the world, loved life, and was constantly engaged in an act of love, which was the responsiveness. So yeah, I think that the openness, we're talking about really enlightened mind, basically. And that's what it is. It's a quality of love and curiosity, involvement. Yeah, all of that. With the world, that just comes naturally as we lose our self-consciousness in our self-centeredness. Michael, do you?
Well, I was thinking along the lines of what it means to not be open when we're locked into judgments and opinions about things, and that there isn't much curiosity because we're already stuck on our point of view. And that when this is letting go in Vipassana, we're able to let go of our point of view and just be open to what's out there. And I think at that point, curiosity is just a natural expression of compassion, a natural expression of engagement. It's not effort in the sense of having a particular goal or agenda, so much as just a responsiveness to the situation as it is. And that's what makes it different. But to say, but there's effort in the sense of there's some kind of activity, yeah. But it's not effort in the sense of I'm doing this to get that, or I'm doing this to get away from that. It's just I'm relating to this as it is.
Our Vipassana is here right now. It's just a matter of coming back from thought into awareness of what is happening in the moment, right now. It's that simple, which is why we can all do it for the rest of our lives and profit from it. I mean, profit, maybe a bad word. We can benefit from it because we'll be coming back with heart and intelligence and appreciation for what is going on in our lives now. Living our lives more fully, constantly coming back. Thought is the great, separates us, deadens us. Into worry, into conniving, into manipulation, into judgment. All of that takes place in thought. And we let it go. Because it's temporary. It just arises and passes. And meanwhile, all of this we're sitting in the middle of, we can come back to. And if you can't come back to it and you keep saying, oh, I come back to it only in a little moment, and then I go off and thought again, fine. Just come back to it in a little moment and see what happens when you repeat that.
Thank you.
Jinyi, your face has been expressing thoughts, or feelings, or reactions. You have anything you want to contribute?
Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
What?
Is that a good thing or a bad thing? Well, not at the moment, but if I come up with something.
Mudra.
Thank you. That was wonderful, John. Perhaps a logistics question, but is what you just did, can that be considered pointing out instructions? Or how would they differ from this?
Or how would what?
How would they be different from this?
Well, this is a pointing out in its own way. Because in addition to talking about, it's bringing us into the experience of. And that's what pointing out is all about. I don't want to glorify it though, make it into something, whoa. But it is, it's where we're pointing to. This whole chapter is so profound. It's really about pointing out to the nature of mind.
I was mostly asking because I think that it takes a lot of trust and love to share pointing out instructions with everyone. And I think what you and Michael are doing has a lot of heart and a lot of trust in all the members of the Sangha. So I was saying it as a good thing. Thank you.
Thank you. Kemper Rinpoche wanted his students to do this, to point out. And he told people to do it. And otherwise, we're just talking about. Who wants to do that? You want to live this. Philip.
So I have a couple of stories I could share about pointing out instructions because they do seem to be all over the board, and it's hard to understand. And people use the expression to mean different things. So I'll start by saying that Toko Urgyen used to say that in his father's generation, they were so secretive that they used a silver tube, and the teacher would whisper the instructions to the student. But that in his own generation, they became much more generous with pointing out instructions. And that in his own family, he said they were given about ages 9 to 10, 9 to 11. Toko Urgyen now gives this story. He says it's important to share pointing out instructions because it's as if at some time in the future, you might meet your father in a train station and you wouldn't even recognize him. So it's important right now to point and say, this is your father. So 10 years from now, you'll know who it is when you meet him. So another story is from Mingyur Rinpoche, and he would do this. I don't have it in front of me, but imagine I have a watch on. He would say, look at this. It's like a bracelet. And I go around asking people, what time is it? What time is it? What time is it? Finally, someone says, look at your bracelet. It's a watch. It will tell you the time. And hearing that one time, from that point forward, he didn't have to ask anyone, what time is it? Because it was there in his bracelet on his wrist. But he needed someone just to point that out to him. So I don't know if that helps or not.
I want to make one thing clear, that what I've presented here, Trungpa Rinpoche told me to present. So I'm not making things up myself. Quite clearly, he did. He wanted his students to teach this because it's so important. We're getting towards the end here.
Well, I'll tell my last pointing out instruction about Toko Urgyen Rinpoche. So where he used to meditate all of the time was a stone house in Nepal. And there would be a lot of people going there to study Buddhism, but also a lot of people there just to trek in the Himalayas. And more than once, he would bring the trekkers in to give them pointing out instructions.
Yeah, I'm reading, I keep telling you that I'm reading this book by Mathieu Ricard on Patrul Rinpoche. And there are quite a few accounts of him pointing out instruction in different ways. I think I read one, didn't I? Yeah, Val says yes, I read one. I'm tempted to read it again. I loved it. In fact, I was thinking of taking his instruction and putting it, on our web, when you join on Zoom and you see that thing by Stephen Wright, instead use this thing by Patrul Rinpoche. Where is it? It's in the other room. Here, I'll get it. We can end with it. Hold on a second. And Michael, you have anything to say? And Pap Antonio? Hold on.
I was looking, I'll just say, keep in mind, I think the term ordinary mind is interesting because it's talking about the mind that's always here. Sometimes said in the Mahamudra teachings that the reason that we don't get it is because it's so simple and it's so close.
Well said. Well said. Yeah, it's enlightened vagabond. But that's what's so well said. I mean, that's what Trungpa Rinpoche used to say. He said the reason nobody can get it is because it's so simple. He said that over and over again to us.
And that's why with the simplicity of just the taste of the tangerine, there's no effort, it's just there.
So can I read this and we'll close with this? This is Patrol's pointing out instruction for an old nomad. The Terton Chokyur Lingpa, he's a very important guy, Chokyur Lingpa. In the 19th century, there were three great teachers, Chokyur Lingpa, and they were all Tertons. Jamgon Kongtrul Lodro Taye, who was the first incarnation later of Trungpa Rinpoche's teacher, Jamgon Kongtrul of Shechen, and Jamyang Kensei Wangpo. So this is the Terton, finder of Terma, Chokyur Lingpa, and then it goes on about, well, I'm going to skip this because it's about his children, but who all considered Patrul to be their root teacher and studied at length with him. Chokyur Lingpa's children. Kunchuk Paldron, who was one of those children, recalled an occasion when she and her family were in Patrul's presence while he gave the pointing out instruction to an old nomad from Golok. And remember, the pointing out can be done so many ways. And to make that clear, Talopa, the great Kagyu, teacher, gave Naropa pointing out instruction by slapping him in the face with a sandal. Took the sandal off his foot and hit Naropa in the face. So that's just one. I mean, it can be done anyway. It just depends on the situation. So he gave pointing instruction to an old nomad from Golok. Speaking in the old man's local dialect, Patrul gave this crucial teaching in brief, pointing to the true nature of mind. Here it is. This is what he said to the old nomad. Don't ruminate about the past. Don't anticipate the future. Don't cogitate about the present. Not tampering with it, leave mind just as is. And it already is as is. It's not a big deal. This very instant, aware, relaxed. Beyond this, there's not a damn thing. Great last line. Beyond this, there's not a damn thing. Do you think that's too much to put up on the waiting room?
You could put up just the last line.
Beyond this, there's not a damn thing. Yeah. Okay, well, shall we close? We'll have group
Thanks,
discussion
everyone.
tomorrow.
Yes.
I'll put up the chants. And who's leading? Forgotten. Anybody? All right, guess it's me. I'm going to mute everybody. So we'll close with a prayer for peace, and then by dedicating the merit, just like he said in the chapter. By the blessings of enlightened and compassionate ones, by the power of my positive actions of 3 times and my prayers of pure aspiration, may wars, conflicts, epidemics, and all other maladies dissolve in this world, and may the earth and all who live on this earth enjoy the abundance of well-being. May all learn to live lovingly with each other. By this merit, may all obtain omniscience. May it defeat the enemy wrongdoing. From the stormy waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death, From the ocean of samsara, may I free all beings. By the confidence of the golden sun of the great East, may the lotus garden of the Rigden's wisdom bloom. May the dark ignorance of sentient beings be dispelled. May all beings enjoy profound, brilliant glory.
Thanks, John. Thanks, Michael.
Thank you, everyone.
Everybody,
Thank you,
Thank you,
everyone.
John. Thank you, Michael.
Good night.
Thanks,
Thank you,
everybody.
everyone.
Thank you, Michael.
Take care.
Good night. Well.
Good night, everybody.